Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to listen to. Today's request comes from Taylor. Thanks for the content. Here's a band you did recently on stream and seemed to like them. In my opinion, the best song off their new album. We're going to be looking at GAEREA. The track specifically is Salve. This one was released about a year ago. Oh, actually, pretty much exactly a year ago. The album came out on September 23rd of last year. So let's dive into this and see what's going on with GAEREA. That's a really fun riff right there. I love the halftime feel on the snare. I mean, the bass kicks are still going crazy, but it feels really nice against the constant 16th notes from everything else. A nice syncopated accent pattern. Very punky with the offbeat snare accent. It's just relentless. It is just non-stop aggression. And of course, as soon as I say that, that's when you decide to prove me wrong with this halftime feel. I wonder what they're going to do for this chord, though. Okay. So, 1 and 3 are the same chords, 2 and 4 are very similar. Really going for eerie with that higher pitched guitar work. I thought they were going to end without resolution. See, they ended it the same way that I thought they ended it earlier. Just stop the riff flat. Stop it cold. And yeah. So yeah, I did enjoy this. For clarification, in case anybody was like, "Oh, he likes this. We need to start suggesting more stuff like it." I like this in isolation. Let me contextualize this. I don't know that I could listen to a full album of this. It would be exceptionally draining, um, and I would need a bit more variety to it. But as an isolated song, 5 minutes worth, yeah, this was fascinating. Um, there's a lot of things in here that work for me if I were to get into more extreme metals. I mean, first of all, we have just exceptional. Can we just take a moment to talk about the drumming? I was gonna like have this little introduction to it, but honestly, the drummer needs no introduction. It's just to me, it's the highlight of the band, and that's not to say that anybody else doesn't deserve praise or spotlighting. It's just that the drummer elevates what the band is doing more so than any other instrument. The guitars play 16th notes for pretty much the entirety of the 5 minute runtime. The vocalist has a harsh. I feel like there's a little bit of pitch manipulation to it, but for the most part, he has this harsh, and that's where he stays at. And the guitars, they're not just 16th tones. We get some atmospheric stuff. We had the halftime feel there close to the end, but a lot of those are rather static. And if the drums weren't doing what the drums were doing, this song would just be so much further down the list for me that I'd enjoy it from a distance more so than really digging the song. The drums are massively dynamic. There are syncopated lines in here. They shift up their style from more death style drumming to full on blast beats. There's punky ideas. There's some melodic drumming that goes on here. I wish there was a little bit more of the melodic drumming, but really getting to listen to some of the ways that the drummer creates moving lines outside of just fills at the end of a phrase, I think really showcases a side to the drumming that I love. I would love to hear more of it too. Um, it's just really nice in a flourishy way against all of the rhythmic stagnancy across the rest of the band. And the drums bring about an aspect of life and evolution to this track that nobody else really does. It brightens up the whole track for me. And like I said, without the drummer doing it would just be another band who plays fast. And there's nothing wrong with that, for sure. I mean, there's still raw endurance going on with everything that's happening here, and we'll talk about it in a second, but the atmospheres and guitar work, bass work, they have their moments to shine as well, but the drums are just a consistent area of interest. If I find the guitars are still doing something that, still playing 16th notes, and the vocalist is still doing what they're doing, I can always come back to the drums and just think, what is this madman working on today? And usually it's something of interest. The dude just doesn't want to stay on one idea for too long, even if the rest of the band does. And he creates all the dynamic moments for this song. He just wields so much power, and just absolutely love everything that dude is bringing to this track. Now, like I mentioned, it's not the only player here. The guitars, while they do primarily play 16th notes in like 90% of this track, I do like how they go about doing it. We can compare it to the 16th note playing that we would hear in black metal, and for the most part, I feel like these move more than a stereotypical black metal riff does, in that they feel like they might have been melodic first, and then they just decided that any eighth notes, quarter notes, or half notes that they decide to utilize are just going to be played, divided up into 16th note hits. And so we actually have rhythmic syncopation in the movement of the notes, even though we don't have any rhythmic diversity in the actual attacks, which are just constant 16th notes. But when we change notes are different. How long we stay on a pitch is different for each pitch. And it creates a rhythmic movement, and the diversity of rhythm mixed with the changing pitches creates something a bit more melodic than I typically associate with black metal, which to me tends to be more atmospheric, even though they're basically doing the same thing. You just play 16th notes all the time and just change, pitches, change your left hand and not really your right hand too much. But it's the way that they go about creating when they change pitches, how long they stay on specific pitches, that I feel gives it a very different feel and puts it more towards a death metal sound. Even if I don't think I've heard a lot of fast death metal like this outside of, technical death metal, but usually that incorporates faster note changes as well, where the right hand is just as technical as the left hand. Um, but yeah, so like a smoother death metal riff style, but with black metal's constant 16th notes. And that's kind of where this feels like for me. The bass is usually, but not always, playing alongside the guitars and just filling out the extra range that the guitars aren't hitting in. But the bass does have a couple of unique areas here and there where it does get to show off a little bit. But same thing, 16th notes all the way. Where the guitars, I think, do shine, though, is not just in their melodic writing, but in their atmospheric writing, and actually more so the way that the atmosphere sounds. And I guess that's a good enough segue to get into production. This is very clean, very modern, and particularly when I want to look at what the guitars are doing atmospherically, I also think it's important to see where they're placed. In a traditional death metal sound, and especially a black metal sound, which this doesn't really have a lot to do with, but again, they utilize the constant 16th note, so I want to bring it into the picture here. A lot of it is highly compressed, right around the face, right around the head, and the guitars are very present. What's interesting here is that the sound sphere is a bit larger than I typically hear in metal, and it gives the instruments a bit more extra room to exist. And what this affords them is lateral space for guitar placement. Sometimes guitars are a bit closer to your ear, and that's typically when they're playing more melodic ideas. But there was a section in the middle of the track somewhere where the guitars kind of moved away from that death metal riffage into more of the black metal. We're going to change our notes every once in a while instead of frequently within a bar. And they also went a bit higher, creating this sort of sci-fi atmospheric kind of thing going on. And the guitars actually distanced themselves from the ear. They had that extra room, and it's not super noticeable. I don't think many people would hear it unless they're searching out for it, but I promise you, you go listen to it again with this in mind, and you'll notice just how distant the atmospheric guitars are rather than the opening guitar riffs. And what it does is it kind of fills in that same space that a lot of more stereotypical symphonic metal does with their strings, putting it just outside the band's sound in order to encompass it rather than be something exceptionally present to the listener. And so I really like this little affordance that they're given. The sound is less claustrophobic, which is subjectively better for me, but there's an objective improvement, I think, to having this wiggle room and allowing the guitars to sit where they're benefited best. And moving towards the atmospheric sound and putting the sound out into the atmosphere is a fantastic decision, placing it around the music. I think at those times there is still at least one guitar, and it could actually be that one guitarist is playing atmosphere and they're pushed to the outsides, and the other guitar is playing lead and they're kept present, rather than the one goes on the left and one goes on the right that I'm pretty sure we heard at the beginning. So even more production tricks being put on display here in order to incorporate whatever is necessary for the specific section. It just sounds great in practice. And the end result is a song that can feel very full, it can still feel very close, and it can feel very spacious without ever losing that wall of sound. And it all comes together by just opening up the sound sphere a little bit and not creating everything so compressed. It is one of my favorite things about modern metal, is really bringing in modern production techniques to the sound and seeing what we can do with that. And I'm all here for it. I really am. Um, I guess that's about it. I mean, like, there's still the vocalist to talk about, but he just, like I said, he takes that one pitch and just kind of works with it. Not a lot of diversity there. Some of the rhythmic things are nice, but a lot of the rhythmic ideas are also a bit on the simpler side. Compared to the drums, I think the vocals could have been a really interesting rhythmic juxtaposition to what the drummer is doing. And they are sort of juxtaposed in that the drummer is technical and the vocal rhythms are a bit simpler, but that's a conversation for another day. It doesn't really have anything to do with this band. It's sort of just one of the things I have against harsh vocals, are vocalists who exclusively use harsh vocals and don't have a variety of harsh sounds to draw on. And I've kind of talked about it before anyways, but so yeah, I'll save that for another day. I guess let's hit some lyrics. Let's see what's going on there. It looks like the track is about someone who has great power, and they find that they've isolated themselves due to this power. They're addicted to fame and praise. At the very beginning, our opening stanza says, "A sulphurous choir, enthroned in the realms of light, a self-deceiving entity of undenying praise. Freedom gets him anxious, suffocating isolation." He finds himself isolated from everything as freedom is anxious to him. Um, but he deceives himself. This power that he thinks he has, he doesn't. I think it's interesting that I feel like I'm supposed to read this character with power. He has fame. But it's interesting that all the onlookers view him behind glass. And the first time I read this, I kind of thought about a glass throne, or maybe a glass throne room, where he can see all who he presides over. But the more that I think about it, the more it's like a sideshow, um, and like an old timey carnival thing where you put the spectacle behind bars, or in this case glass, and the idea of suffocating isolation leads me to think of a smaller room than like this massive area that just happens to have clear walls. He is trapped in here. What's interesting is that he kind of at one point realizes that he's wasted his time. It says, hastening every step, watching his bones crack to see how long he lasts. He's at the end of his life, and more people have come to watch him as he suffers. By the end of it, it says, all that he ever dreamed is all that he ever lost. He lays down and wonders why he is here. Tranquility tinged with terror. Perfectionist act in vanity, between sorrow and paradox. The light ceases to shine. Says that all of the hunger that he had for this life led him to fool's gold. So there is definitely something glamorous about his life, whatever that may be, but in chasing it, he found out that he just became a spectacle. He still never actually had the power that he wanted. It was all an illusion, and by the end of it, the people that he felt he had power over watched him die, possibly even taking bets, as it said, to see how long he lasts. It's a spectacle of it. How long is it until this guy's gonna die? How long is he gonna hold on inside of his glass cage? Um, to me, it's about the. Oh, I just punched the microphone. It's about the unknowing consequences or side effects of power, of fame. There's always a price to pay when you get stuff like that. And what is that price? Where will it take you as you try to avoid paying it? And in this case, he seems to be rather popular. Fame definitely could be an element here, and the idea of losing your freedom, your autonomy, the ability to go out in public because of something you chased like fame is sort of just what we equate with it, but it actually is a bit of a monkey's paw wish. I want everyone to love me. Well, now everyone does, and you can't go see them anymore. Straight up Twilight Zone ending right there. You know, the minute that you try to engage with people, you're going to be overwhelmed, there's going to be too many, and you can't ever have a real personal relationship with anyone anymore because you are this famous person. The idea of wanting to be loved by all ends up meaning that you're loved by none. And you end up trapping yourself in a glass cage of emotion. Uh, Musically, I don't know that I hear any of this in the song, but there's definitely an intensity and rush through this track. The 16th note is probably just what they play, but it also feels so much like time is passing by rapidly. There's an inherent an inherent element of seeing and feeling the time of this track and just watching it speed by at blistering paces and realizing, oh, snap, when did this happen? I'm at the end of my life now. And I don't have anything to show for it other than my fame, which has backfired. So I guess the use of 16th notes ties into that a little bit, but like I said, it's probably more of a this is what we play kind of deal than we specifically chose this for this song to focus on the temporal aspect of it. Those are my thoughts on GAEREA's Salve. Let me know what you thought, though, of this track in the comments. Give me your thoughts, perspectives, opinions, anything else you want to tell me. Did you enjoy it? Anything I said that you agree with or disagree with? Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you to this menu right here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.